nation and to Georgia, but to the entire world, because it's imperative that we have a voting system that people can trust. They talk about disenfranchising voters. Well, there are over 1 million voters here in Georgia that will be disenfranchised by the counting of illegal ballots that render theirs useless. It's every legal vote that must be counted. Here we have scads of evidence. 20, and the vote count here is narrow. I mean, the disparity now is just a little over 10,000 votes. Just any one of our categories that we've identified require decertification. For example, 20,311 non-residents voted illegally. Between 16,000 and 22,000 unrequested absentee ballots were sent in violation of the legislative scheme. Between 31,000 and 38,000 absentee ballots were returned by voters but never counted. 32,347 votes in Fulton County were identified to be statistically anomalous. And the vote spike for Mr. Biden, that is completely a mathematical impossibility according to multiple expert affidavits we've provided, shows that it was like 120,000 Biden votes all of a sudden magically appear after midnight on election night. That happens to coincide with the time we have video of the Fulton County election workers running the same stack of rather pristine-looking ballots through the machine multiple times. And as for the recount, that makes no difference, because if you recount the same fake ballots you achieve in the same machines, you achieve the same results. That's why the hand count in Ware County that revealed the 74 swing is so important and indicative of the systemic machine fraud that our experts have identified, and why it's so important that we at least get access for the Department of Defense even, or our own experts, or jointly, to examine the machines in Fulton County and the 10 counties we requested in our protective order, or our motion for.
How is this whole case not moot from the standpoint of, even if you were to win Georgia, could Mr. Trump win the election?
Well, fraud, Your Honor, can't be allowed by a court of law to stand.
Well, that's not what I'm asking. I'm not saying there may not be other issues that need to be addressed and that there might not be questions that need to be investigated. I'm asking, as a practical matter, in this particular election, can Mr. Trump even win the election, even if he wins Georgia?
Yes, he can win the election.
How would that happen?
Because there are other states that are still in litigation that have even more serious fraud than we have in Georgia. It is nowhere near over. And it doesn't affect just the presidential election. This fraud affects Senate seats, congressional seats, gubernatorial seats. It affects even local elections. Another huge statistic that is enough by itself to change the result is the at least 96,000 absentee ballots that were voted but are not reflected as being returned. All of these instances are violations of federal law as well as Georgia law. In addition, Mr. Ramsland's report finds that the ballot marking machine appears to have normally influenced election results and fraudulently and erroneously attributed between 13,725,000 and the 136,908 votes to Mr. Biden just in Georgia. We have multiple witnesses who saw masses of pristine ballots appearing to be computer marked, not hand marked, and those were repeatedly run through machines until votes were injected in the system that night without being observed by lawfully required observers in violation of Georgia and federal law, that resulted in the mass shoot-up spike of votes for Mr. Biden. Mr. Favorito's affidavit is particularly important. He talks about the Ware County Waycross City Commission candidate who reported that the Ware County hand audit is flipped those 74 votes. That is a statistically significant swing for a precinct that small, and there's no explanation for it other than the machine did it. We have testimony of witnesses who saw that their vote did not come out the same way it was. Mr. Favorito is a computer tech expert. He said that the vote flipping malware was resident on the county election management system of possibly one or more precinct or scanners. There was also an instance where it came out of the Arlo system changed, and there was no way to verify the votes coming out of the individual precincts versus coming out of Arlo, because apparently they didn't keep the individual results so that they can be compared. So there was a vote swapping incident through the Arlo process also. There was a misalignment of results, according to Mr. Favorito, among all three presidential candidates, rather than just a swapping of the results for two candidates. In other words, they would sometimes put votes into a third-party candidate and take those out and put them in Mr. Biden's pile. The system itself, according to its own technological handbook, explains that it allows for votes to be put in. It can scan to set or overlook anything it wants to overlook, put those in an adjudication pile, and then in the adjudication process, which apparently was conducted in top secret at the English Street warehouse, where all kinds of strange things were going on, were just thrown out. They could just literally drag and drop thousands of votes and throw them out. That is why it is so important that we at least get temporary relief to examine the systems and to hold off the certification or decertify or ask the court to halt the proceedings continuing right now until we can have a few days to examine the machines and get the actual evidence off the machines and look at the ballots themselves, because we know there were a number of counterfeit ballots that were used in the Fulton County count that night. It would be a simple matter to examine 100,000 or so ballots and look at which ones are fake. It's possible to determine that with relative ease. This is not about who or which government officials knew anything was wrong with the machine. It's entirely possible that many people did not know anything was wrong with them. But it is about ensuring the integrity of the vote and the confidence of the people that the will they expressed in their vote is what actually determines the election. Very few people in this country have any confidence in that level right now. Very few. The standard is only preponderance of the evidence. We have shown more than enough for a prima facie case to meet the standard required that this court is required to apply. It is crucial that we decertify and stop the vote. We need to have discovery. It's so important to the American people, particularly in a country that is built on the rule of law, to know that their election system is fair and honest.
That rule of law limits where these suits can be filed and who can bring them. Specifically on the standing issue, how did your clients survive the motion to dismiss with respect to the standing issue if I don't follow the Eighth Circuit's case and opinion in Carson?
Well, even the court's decision in Wood is so distinguishable, it should make clear electors have standing. In that case, for example, the state could not even say who did have standing, but under the Constitution, electors clearly do.
But Georgia, unlike Minnesota, differentiates between candidates and presidential electors, right?
I'm not sure about that, but we also have the Cobb County Republican Party official who is suing, and the electors themselves are part of the constitutional clause that entitles them to standing. I think the third...
You have a pretty glib response to what the 11th Circuit has held regarding these cases. I mean, the 11th Circuit has basically said, we're not, the federal courts are courts of limited jurisdiction, and we're not open 24/7 to remedy every freewheeling constitutional issue that comes up. They have made it clear, the appellate courts have made it clear that they don't want district courts handling this matter. They want state courts handling state election disputes, even regarding in federal elections. The federal government has nothing to do with the state election, how it was conducted, as you said. It's the Secretary of State who is the chief election officer and decides it. Why shouldn't the state of Georgia investigate this? Why should it be a federal judge?
Because we raise federal constitutional issues that are paramount to equal protection. He did not request decertification. That's one of the things that distinguished that case. He was not an elector or a representative of a county. He was simply an individual. And I'm not sure that decision is correct, because in that case they were also wondering who could challenge it. Well, obviously, the Federal Equal Protection Clause and the constitutional issues we have raised here give this court federal question jurisdiction. This court's one of the primary checks and balances on the level of fraud that we are experiencing here. It's extremely important that this court exercise its jurisdiction as a gatekeeper on these issues.